elderly widow lived alone, inherited one dry plot of land, until she heard the badger digging the earth that changed her life. Martha Miller held the deed with trembling hands as the lawyer explained the terms of the inheritance. After 43 years of marriage, all that remained of her husband's estate was a piece of dry land in rural Arkansas, while the in-laws kept the main house, the business, and the family savings. The noise had started on the third night on the abandoned land, a persistent scraping, as if someone were digging beneath the earth where she had set up her makeshift tent. Martha lit the lantern and walked barefoot over the rocky ground, following the sound that came from different points around the small wooden structure that served as temporary shelter. "Must be some animal," she murmured to herself, trying to convince herself there was nothing to fear in that isolated place. Her brother-in-law Harold had been clear during the reading of the will. The land was worthless, just rocks and dry brush. If she wanted to get rid of it, he knew someone willing to pay $2,000 to take the plot off her hands. At the time, Martha had refused out of pride, but now, alone in that wasteland, she began to question her decision. The morning brought the discovery: small round holes scattered all over the yard, as if someone had drilled holes. Some were shallow, others deeper, but all had the same characteristic. The excavated earth was piled neatly beside each hole. Martha crouched beside the largest one and stuck her arm in up to the elbow. She felt the smooth, rounded wall, clearly dug by some animal. When she pulled her hand back, she brought with it a handful of damp earth that glinted slightly under the morning sun. "How strange," she said, examining the small golden fragments mixed with the clay. During breakfast, which consisted of toast with butter and black coffee, she noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. A medium-sized badger walked calmly among the rocks, as if it owned the place. The animal showed no fear when she approached, merely observing her with curiosity before disappearing into one of the tunnels it had dug during the night. "So, you're the one making all this mess," she said to the empty hole, surprised to feel a strange companionship with that creature. The phone rang in the middle of the afternoon. It was Harold, asking if she had changed her mind about selling the land. His voice carried an urgency that wasn't present in previous conversations. "Martha, you're 72 years old. It makes no sense for you to stay there alone in the middle of nowhere. Sell that land and come live in a decent town." "I'm not selling, Harold. I've already told you that. Listen, a new buyer has appeared. He's offering $5,000 cash. It's a good opportunity." The difference in the offered price caught her attention. In 3 weeks, the price had risen from $2,000 to $5,000. Something wasn't right. "Why has the price gone up so much?" "Oh, I don't know. The guy must be in a hurry to buy. The important thing is, you'll get good money to settle in town." Martha hung up without giving a definitive answer. Her brother-in-law's insistence was beginning to bother her, especially since he had never shown genuine concern for her well-being. During the last years of the marriage, Harold barely greeted her at family gatherings, treating her like a stranger who had intruded into the Miller family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. The badger appeared again in the late afternoon, this time accompanied by a smaller one. The two walked methodically across the land, stopping at specific points as if following an invisible map. Martha watched them from the window of the small house, noticing that they avoided certain areas and always concentrated on the same spots. Curious, she decided to investigate one of the deeper holes. She grabbed a flashlight and carefully climbed down as far as she could reach. The tunnel wall was smooth and damp, and at the bottom something reflected the flashlight's beam. Very carefully, she managed to pick up a few fragments of the shiny material. Under the direct light, the stones had a golden glint very different from anything she knew. They weren't large, but there were many of them scattered at the bottom of the tunnel. Martha put some in her bag, planning to show them to someone who understood such things. The nearest neighbor lived 2 kilometers away. Mrs. Clara was an 80-year-old woman who raised goats and chickens on a small farm. When Martha showed up at her door the next day, she was welcomed with strong coffee and homemade cookies. "My dear, I've missed you. I haven't seen you since Arthur's funeral," said Clara, referring to Martha's late husband. "That's right, Clara. I'm living on the land he left me. Did you know that land well?" The neighbor's face changed expression as if an uncomfortable memory had surfaced. "Yes, I did. Your Arthur spent a lot of time out there in his last years, always carrying strange tools, some maps. I'd ask what he was doing, but he'd only say it was man's business." Martha felt a tightness in her chest. Her husband had never mentioned any special projects on the land. What kind of tools? "Oh, digging things. Things for measuring distance. Once I saw him with a device that made noise when he passed it over the ground. Modern stuff, you know how it is." "And did he go alone?" Clara hesitated before answering, as if deciding whether or not to tell something. "Not always. Sometimes Harold went with him. The two of them would be out there measuring things, making marks on the ground. But after a while, only your Arthur kept going." The revelation hit Martha like a punch to the stomach. Harold knew the land much better than he had admitted, and if there was something valuable there, he certainly knew. "Clara, do you think they were looking for something?" The neighbor got up and went to an old cabinet in the kitchen. From it, she pulled out a shoebox yellowed with time. "Your Arthur gave me this about 2 months before he passed. Said, if anything happened to him, I was to give it to you. But since you disappeared after the funeral, I kept it waiting for an opportunity." Inside the box were several handwritten papers, some rudimentary maps, and photographs of the land taken from different angles. Arthur's handwriting was nervous, as if he had written in haste or anxiety. The notes spoke of natural deposits, unusual rock formations, and extraction potential. One of the papers caught her attention in particular. It was a letter addressed to her. "My dearest Martha, if you are reading this, it is because I have already departed, and you have discovered our secret. The land you inherited is not what it seems to be. For years I have been studying the geological formations of that region, and I have discovered something that could change our lives. I didn't tell you before because I wanted to be certain, and because I know how greedy my family can be. Use this information wisely, and do not trust any of my relatives. They know more than they let on. With all my love, Arthur." Martha's hands trembled as she read and reread the letter. The man she had lived with for over 4 decades had kept a secret that could have transformed the end of both their lives. At the same time, she felt grateful for his concern in protecting her from the family's greed. "Clara, may I take these things?" "Of course, dear. They were meant for you. But be careful, okay? When money is involved, people change." The journey back home was long and full of reflections. Martha understood now why Harold was so interested in buying the land, and why the price had increased so rapidly. They knew the potential of that land, but they hoped she would be naive enough to sell for a pittance. Back at the property, she spread all the papers on the makeshift table and began comparing Arthur's notes with the places where the badger had dug. The coincidence was striking. Almost all the points marked on the map corresponded exactly to the holes the animal had made. The phone rang again. This time it was Harold's daughter, Sarah. "Aunt Martha, how are you? Dad is worried about you living alone in that isolated place." "I'm fine, Sarah, no need to worry. Listen, Aunt, a really good opportunity has come up. A company wants to buy land in the area for a big project. They're paying very well, $8,000 per hectare. How many hectares is your land again?" Martha quickly calculated. It was 3 hectares, which would be $24,000. A considerable sum for someone living on a small pension. "It's a good offer, Sarah, but I still don't want to sell." "Aunt, with all due respect, you have to think about the future. 72 years old, living alone in a place with no resources. If something happens, we won't even know." The condescending tone of her niece irritated Martha. It was the same attitude the whole family had always had toward her, treating her like a person incapable of making her own decisions. "Sarah, I appreciate the concern, but I'm fine here, and I'm not selling the land." "But Aunt..." "This conversation is over." Martha hung up the phone and went back to examining the documents. One of the photographs showed Arthur kneeling next to a hole, holding what looked like a large, shiny stone. In the background, she could see Harold watching with a poorly disguised expression of greed. The night brought new sounds of digging. This time Martha decided to follow the badger more closely. Wrapped in a blanket and carrying a flashlight, she walked silently behind the animal, which seemed completely focused on its task. The badger stopped beside a large rock that stood in the center of the property. It began to dig with impressive energy, removing damp soil that glowed slightly under the moonlight. Martha approached slowly and illuminated the hole that was forming. What she saw took her breath away. At the bottom of the tunnel, partially buried, were dozens of stones of varying sizes, all with the same golden sheen she had found earlier. But these were larger, more defined, clearly more valuable than the small fragments she had collected before. The badger looked at her as if presenting its discovery, then continued digging, revealing more and more stones. It was as if the animal knew exactly where to look, guided by some instinct that humans had lost. Martha returned home with a racing heart and a stone the size of an egg in her hand. She needed to find out what those formations were, but she knew she couldn't trust anyone in the area. Anyone she consulted could be connected to the family or to those interested in buying the land. The next morning, she decided to make a trip to Little Rock to consult an independent geologist. She stored some of the larger stones in a discreet bag and left the property with the feeling that she was taking the first step toward discovering the truth. The bus ride lasted 3 hours. Martha had researched online for a laboratory specialized in mineral analysis located in the city center. The address was on a busy commercial street, very different from the tranquility of rural Arkansas. Dr. Stephen Vance was a middle-aged man with thick glasses and a well-groomed beard. When Martha showed him the stones, he picked up a magnifying glass and began to examine them carefully. "Where did you find these specimens?" "On some land I inherited from my husband out in the country." The geologist continued his examination for a few minutes, then looked up with a serious expression. "Ma'am, I need to run some more specific tests, but I can tell you these are not ordinary stones. They appear to be quartz with inclusions of native gold, possibly pyrites. If confirmed, they could have significant commercial value." Martha's heart raced. Significant commercial value means how much? It depends on the purity and the quantity available, but we're talking about values that could range from hundreds to thousands of dollars per kilogram, depending on the gold concentration. "And how long do the tests take?" 48 hours, but ma'am, I need to warn you about something important. If there really is a deposit of this kind on your land, a lot of people will become interested. I recommend total discretion until we have the definitive results. Martha spent 2 nights in a simple inn in downtown Little Rock, trying to process all the information. If Dr. Stephen was right, that worthless land that Harold was so eager to buy could be worth a fortune. And that would perfectly explain the family's growing insistence on convincing her to sell. On the 3rd day, she returned to the lab to get the results. Dr. Stephen greeted her with a discreet smile and a sealed envelope. "The news is good, Mrs. Miller. We confirmed the presence of native gold in the samples, with purity above 80%. Furthermore, we identified traces of other valuable minerals like rose quartz and amethyst." Martha opened the envelope and saw numbers that seemed unreal. The analysis indicated a potential value of $15,000 to $20,000 per kilogram of raw material, depending on the gold concentration in each piece. "Doctor, does this mean my land has a mine?" "Not necessarily a mine in the traditional sense, but certainly a significant deposit of precious minerals. Based on the quality of your samples, I'd say there is potential for commercial extraction, provided it's done legally and sustainably." "And what do I do?" "First, you need to register the discovery with the proper authorities. Then, hire a specialized company to do a complete survey of the land. But be careful who you trust with this information. News like this spreads fast." The trip back was even longer, but this time Martha didn't feel the fatigue. Her mind was buzzing with plans and worries. She had in her hands the confirmation that she owned something valuable. But she also knew it meant trouble with the family, and with people interested in taking advantage of the situation. Upon arriving at the property, she found an unpleasant surprise. There was an unfamiliar car parked in front of the house, and voices coming from the backyard. She approached slowly and recognized Harold talking with 2 men in suits. "So you think she'll agree to sell?" one of the strangers was asking. "She will. Martha has always been a simple woman. When she sees the amount you're offering, she won't resist," replied Harold. "And if she gets suspicious about something?" "She won't. She doesn't understand any of this. To her, land is land, no matter what's underneath. Martha felt a mix of anger and disappointment. Her brother-in-law was clearly scheming to deceive her, treating her like a naive and incapable person. She waited for the men to leave before showing herself. When Harold saw her arriving, he forced a fake smile. "Martha, I'm glad you're here. I've been waiting to talk to you about a very interesting proposal." "What kind of proposal?" "A group of investors from Washington, D.C. has appeared. They want to buy your land for an eco-tourism project. They're offering $50,000 cash. The difference in the offered amounts confirmed all her suspicions. In just a few weeks, the price had jumped from $2,000 to $50,000. Obviously, the family knew much more about the land's potential than they had admitted. "Harold, I need to ask you a direct question. Did you and Arthur find anything valuable on this land?" Her brother-in-law hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the direct question. "Why are you asking that?" "Because I found the papers he left with Clara. I know the two of you spent a lot of time here, taking measurements and looking for something." Harold's face turned red with anger. "That damned old woman shouldn't have given you those things." "So it's true. You knew there was something valuable here." "Arthur had some crazy theories about gemstones. I never really believed in that talk of his. But you believed it enough to want to buy the land as soon as he was gone. Listen, Martha, you don't understand how these things work. Even if there was something here, it would take a lot of money to extract it, licenses, equipment. It's easier to sell to someone who has the structure for it. And get a small fraction of what it's really worth? At least you'd have guaranteed money, no risks." The conversation was interrupted by the familiar sound of a badger digging. The animal had appeared in the middle of the argument and was working energetically on a new hole, completely indifferent to the human's presence. Harold looked at the badger with a strange expression, as if the animal were an old acquaintance. "That critter is still around?" "Still? Why?" "Arthur used to follow that badger. He said the critter had a special instinct for finding buried things." The admission confirmed another one of Martha's suspicions. Her husband had used the badger as a kind of natural guide to locate mineral deposits. And if the animal kept digging, it meant there was still much to be discovered. "Harold, I'm going to be very clear with you. I will not sell the land for any amount you or your friends offer, and if there's something valuable here, I will find out what it is and how to proceed legally. You're making a mistake, Martha. A woman your age alone can't handle this kind of situation. You'll end up being swindled by adventurers and losing everything. I'd rather take that risk than be swindled by my own family." Harold left without saying goodbye, clearly frustrated by her resistance. Martha realized she had declared war, but felt more determined than ever to discover the truth about her inheritance. The following night, she decided to do a systematic mapping of all the places where the badger had dug. Using a flashlight and Arthur's notes, she marked each hole with a wooden stake and numbered all the points. The work lasted until dawn, but revealed an interesting pattern. The tunnels formed almost a straight line that crossed the land from one end to the other, always passing through the locations Arthur had marked on his maps. It was as if there was an underground vein of minerals that the badger could naturally detect and follow. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The phone rang early the next morning. It was Sarah, the niece, but this time her voice was different, more urgent. "Aunt Martha, I need to talk to you in person. It's very important." "You can tell me, Sarah." "Not over the phone. Can I come there today?" Martha agreed, curious to know what had changed in her niece's behavior. Sarah arrived at noon, driving nervously and looking around as if afraid of being followed. "Aunt, I came here because I can't keep quiet about something any longer." "What is it?" "Dad and my uncles are planning to have you legally declared incompetent." The news struck Martha like a bolt of lightning. Legal incompetence meant a judge could declare her mentally unfit to manage her own affairs. Declared incompetent? Why? "They're going to claim you have mental problems, that you're not fit to live alone in an isolated place, that it could be dangerous. They've already hired a lawyer and are gathering evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "Recorded conversations where you seem confused, witnesses who will say they saw you talking to yourself, things like that. They want me to testify too, saying you didn't recognize me when I called." Martha felt a chill. The family was willing to question her sanity to get what they wanted. "And will you testify?" Sarah began to cry. "I don't want to, Aunt. That's why I came here to tell you. They pressured me a lot, said it was for your own good. But I know that's a lie." "What else do you know, Sarah?" "I know that Dad and Uncle Arthur found something valuable on this land years ago. I overheard them talking about deposits and buried riches. After Uncle passed away, Dad became desperate to get this land. Do they know exactly what's here?" "I don't know the details, but I know it's something worth a lot of money. Dad once said it would be enough for the whole family to become rich." Sarah's revelations confirmed everything Martha had suspected. The family not only knew the land's value, but was willing to use dishonest means to get it. "Sarah, when do they plan to file this lawsuit?" "Next week. The lawyer said it's better to act fast, before you do something foolish with the land. And what if I prove I'm perfectly capable and know exactly what I have here?" "How so?" Martha told her niece about the discovery of the minerals, the tests done in Little Rock, and the real value of what was buried on the land. Sarah listened with wide eyes. "My God, Aunt, you really found gold?" "Among other valuable things. And your father knew all about it since Arthur's time. They're going to be furious when they find out you know the truth. They already are furious. That's why the rush to have me declared incompetent." Sarah offered to testify in her aunt's favor if the lawsuit was indeed filed, but Martha knew she would need more concrete proof of her mental sanity and ability to manage her assets. After her niece left, she called Dr. Stephen in Little Rock. "Doctor, I need help. My family is trying to have me declared incompetent to take the land. Is there any way to officially prove the value of what I found?" "Yes, there is. I can prepare a complete technical report with a commercial appraisal and an opinion on the exploitation potential. This document would have legal value and would prove your decisions about the land are based on solid technical information." "How much would that cost?" "For a complete report, including analysis of more samples and a reserve estimate, it would be about $3,000. It was a large sum for Martha's budget, but essential to protect her rights. She agreed to the service and arranged to send more samples by mail. That night, she watched the badger in its daily excavation. The animal had started working in a new area closer to the house. The holes in this region were different, wider and with much more shiny material exposed. Martha collected samples from several different points, taking care to document each location with photographs and notes. If she was going to legally fight for her rights, she would need all the documentation possible. While she worked, she heard the sound of an engine approaching. It was too late for normal visits, so she turned off the lantern and hid behind the house. A dark car stopped on the road, but no one got out. It remained there for almost an hour, with the occupants clearly observing the property. Martha realized the situation was getting more tense. If the family was indeed willing to have her declared incompetent, they might also try other forms of pressure. She decided she needed her own legal help. The next day she sought out the most respected law firm in the nearest town. Attorney Diane Sterling was a woman in her 50s, specializing in family and inheritance law. "Mrs. Martha, competency hearings are serious proceedings that require solid medical evidence. If you have full mental capacity and can prove it, it will be very difficult for them to get what they want. And how do I prove that? First, with a psychological evaluation by an independent professional. Second, by demonstrating that your decisions about the property are rational and well-founded." Martha showed the attorney all of Arthur's documents, the results of the mineralogical tests, and the notes she had made about the badger's excavations. "This is very good," said Attorney Diane. "It shows you're acting methodically and based on scientific evidence. It's not the behavior of someone who is mentally incapacitated." "And about the property's value?" "If confirmed through the technical report you commissioned, that will destroy any argument that selling would be the rational decision. On the contrary, selling for $50,000, something worth hundreds of thousands, would be proof of mental incapacity." The meeting with the attorney brought relief and confidence. Martha now knew she had solid legal arguments to defend herself, but she also understood the battle would be long and costly. Back at the property, she found another unpleasant surprise. Someone had been there during her absence. Several of the holes dug by the badger had been disturbed, and some of the stakes she had used to mark the spots were out of place. Even more concerning, rocks were missing. Places where she knew valuable material had been exposed were now clean, as if someone had collected everything that was visible. The badger appeared in the late afternoon, more agitated than normal. The animal walked from one hole to another, sniffing and digging quickly, as if searching for something that had disappeared. "They took your little rocks too, didn't they?" said Martha, talking to the badger as if it could understand. "Don't worry, friend. There will be more where those came from." That night, she decided to stand guard. She settled by the front window with a cup of coffee and watched the road. Around 2 in the morning, the same dark car appeared again, this time with 2 people who got out and walked toward the holes. Martha put her cell phone on silent mode and started recording. She managed to capture images of the 2 men using flashlights to examine the tunnels dug by the badger. They worked for almost an hour, collecting samples and photographing the sites. When they left, she checked what they had done. All the larger holes had been cleared of any visible material. It was clearly an organized operation to assess the mineral deposit's potential. The next morning, she called Attorney Diane and reported what had happened. "That is trespassing and theft," said the attorney. "Do you have the recordings?" "I do, but I couldn't see the men's faces clearly." "It doesn't matter. What's important is that we have proof there are third parties interested in the property, acting illegally. This strengthens our argument that there is real value in the property. And now you will expedite the technical report process, and we will file a preventive measure against any attempt at an injunction. I will also guide you on how to document everything that is happening." Dr. Stevens' report was ready in a week. The results were even better than Martha had hoped. The document confirmed the presence of native gold, quartz, and other precious minerals in commercially viable concentrations. The total estimated value of the deposit was between $200,000 and $300,000, considering only the areas already mapped by the badger. The geologist recommended a broader survey of the land to determine the real extent of the reserves. Armed with the technical report, Martha felt prepared to face any attempt by the family to challenge her legally. But she knew they wouldn't easily give up on such a large sum. The answer came 2 days later. Harold appeared accompanied by an older man, who introduced himself as Peter Walsh, a mining consultant. "Martha, Peter here is an expert in land evaluation. He analyzed your land and has some important information for you." Peter Walsh was a thin man, about 60, with an executive briefcase and manners too formal for the rural setting. "Ma'am, I conducted a preliminary analysis of your property. I can confirm there are indications of minerals underground, but nothing that justifies commercial exploitation." "How so?" "The concentrations are very low, and the extraction costs would be higher than the value of the extracted material. Furthermore, there are environmental and bureaucratic issues that would make any project unviable." Martha immediately realized this was an attempt to devalue her discovery. "And what would your recommendation be?" "Sell the land to someone who can assume the risks and costs of exploitation. I represent a group interested in making a fair offer, considering the deposit's limitations." "What group is that?" "Private investors with experience in the sector. They are willing to pay $80,000 cash, assuming all the risks of exploitation." The amount had gone up again, this time to $80,000. Martha realized that each expert who appeared indirectly confirmed the growing value of the property. "I've already had an independent analysis done," she said, "and the results are quite different from yours." Peter Walsh's face hardened. "May I know who performed this analysis?" "A certified lab in Little Rock." "Ma'am, with all due respect, not all labs have the necessary expertise to evaluate complex mineral deposits. I have 20 years of experience in the sector." "Then you wouldn't mind seeing the technical report I received?" Martha went to fetch the document and handed it to Peter Walsh. As he read it, she watched his expression gradually change from condescending to concerned. "This report is overestimated," he finally said. "The values presented do not match market reality." "Interesting, because the amounts you are offering for the land only increase with each visit." Harold and Peter Walsh exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Martha, "You don't understand the complexity of this type of business," said her brother-in-law. "Even if there were gold here, you would need permits, expensive equipment, specialized labor. You don't have the resources for that." "Perhaps not, but I have the right to decide whether I want to try or if I prefer to sell. And for now, I don't want to sell." Peter Walsh put the papers back in his briefcase with abrupt movements, clearly irritated by her resistance. "Ma'am, I must warn you about one thing. Mineral exploitation without proper permits is a federal crime. If you try to extract anything from here without authorization, you could have serious problems with the law." The veiled threat did not go unnoticed by Martha. "And who said I'm going to do illegal extraction? I'm just warning you about the risks. It would be a shame to see a person your age facing legal problems due to a lack of information." After the two had left, Martha called Dr. Stephen and reported the conversation. "Ma'am, this so-called Peter Walsh is no consultant at all," said the geologist. "I looked up his name in the professional registries. He's a retired real estate broker with no background in geology or mining." The information confirmed it was yet another attempt by the family to deceive her. They were bringing in fake experts to devalue her discovery. "Dr. Stephen, how do I proceed to legalize a potential exploitation of the land?" "First, you need to do a complete topographic survey and an environmental impact study. Then request the permits from the competent authorities. It's a long process, but perfectly legal for small-scale operations." "And how much would all that cost?" "It depends on the area's size, but for a plot of land your size, between $15,000 and $20,000 for all the initial documentation." It was a significant amount, but Martha realized it would be a necessary investment to protect her rights in the long run. She decided she would use part of the small cash inheritance Arthur had left to start the legalization process. That night, the badger brought a new surprise. Instead of digging in the usual spots, it headed for an area at the back of the property it had never explored before. The animal worked with redoubled energy, creating a tunnel deeper than any before. Martha followed it with the flashlight and was astonished by what she saw. The subsoil in that region was different, with layers of rock that shone intensely under the light. They weren't just loose stones like in the other locations, but continuous veins of precious material embedded in the rock formation. She collected some samples and stored them carefully. If that was confirmed, the land's value would be far greater than any previous estimate. The next day, she made another trip to Little Rock to deliver the samples to Dr. Stephen. The geologist was impressed with the quality of the material. "Mrs. Martha, this is exceptional. If there's a formation like this throughout the back of your property, we're talking about a deposit that could be worth millions, not hundreds of thousands." "How so, millions?" "These veins of quartz with native gold are extremely rare in the region. A deposit of this quality could sustain a small mining operation for decades." The revelation left Martha dizzy. In a few weeks, she had discovered she possessed something far more valuable than she had ever imagined. But she also understood that this meant even bigger problems, with people interested in appropriating her discovery. "Dr. Stephen, I need advice. With all this value at stake, how do I protect myself from attempts at theft or coercion?" "First, by documenting everything officially as quickly as possible. Second, by seeking serious partners for the exploitation instead of trying to do everything alone. And third, by maintaining absolute secrecy until you have all the legal documentation in order." Martha understood she had reached a point of no return. She could no longer pretend it was ordinary land, nor could she trust the family to help her. She would need to make difficult decisions about the future, always with the possibility that unscrupulous people would try to take advantage of her age and apparent vulnerability. The journey back was marked by a mix of euphoria and worry. Euphoria for discovering she had been blessed with unexpected wealth. Worry for the challenges ahead, dealing with others' greed and the legal complexity of a mineral discovery. Upon arriving at the property, she found another unpleasant surprise. The house had been broken into, drawers turned inside out, papers scattered everywhere, all indicating someone had been looking for something specific. Luckily, she had taken all the important documents to Little Rock. The intruders found nothing but old clothes and household utensils, but the violation of her privacy and the feeling of insecurity were devastating. Martha decided she could no longer stay alone on the property. She called Sarah and asked her niece to spend a few days with her, at least until she could install some security system. Sarah arrived the next morning bringing disturbing news about the family. "Aunt, they're desperate. Daddy found out you went after technical reports, and he was furious. He said you're meddling in things you don't understand and that you're going to get hurt. And the guardianship petition? They sped up the process. The lawyer said the paperwork will be filed this week." "Based on what?" "On the same claims as before, plus now they're saying you have delusions of grandeur and believe you found gold on the property." Martha couldn't help a bitter laugh. The family was using her real discovery as proof of mental instability. "Sarah, what if I prove there really is gold here, that it's not delusions?" "What do you mean?" Martha decided to trust her niece. She showed her the technical reports, the photographs of the excavations, and the mineral samples she had collected. Sarah was silent for a long time, processing the information. "My God, Aunt, is all this true?" "Yes, and that's why your family wants this land so badly. They've always known, since Arthur's time." "But then, Daddy has been lying all along?" "He has, and now he wants to have me declared incompetent to get what he couldn't get through lies." Sarah began to cry, finally understanding the extent of her own family's manipulation. "Aunt, I won't let them do this to you. I'll testify to the truth, even if it means fighting with my father." "Sarah, are you sure this could affect your relationship with the whole family?" "Better than letting them rob you. Daddy has always been greedy, but I never imagined he'd go this far." From that moment on, Martha knew she had at least one ally in the family. Sarah offered to help with the legal documentation and to serve as a witness that her aunt was perfectly lucid and capable of making her own decisions. In the following days, they worked together, organizing all the documents and evidence. Sarah was impressed with the methodology her aunt had used to map the Badger's excavations and with the quality of the notes she had taken. "Aunt, any judge who sees this documentation will realize you're acting in a completely rational and organized way." "I hope so, dear, because if they succeed in having me declared incompetent, they'll take everything and split it among themselves." The Badger continued its nightly work, seemingly oblivious to the human dramas happening around it. Sarah was fascinated watching the animal work, especially its precision in locating exactly the spots where there were valuable minerals. "It's amazing how he knows where to dig," she commented. "Your Uncle Arthur used to say some animals have instincts we've lost. Maybe the Badger can sense something in the ground that we don't notice. Or maybe he's smarter than our whole family," said Sarah, watching the animal expose another concentration of precious minerals. A week later, Attorney Diane called with news about the guardianship process. "Mrs. Martha, they filed the petition yesterday, but I have good news. The assigned judge is known to be very thorough with this type of proceeding. He doesn't accept vague allegations or inconsistent evidence." "And when would the hearing be?" "In 15 days. But before that, you will have to undergo an official psychological evaluation. I've already scheduled it with a trusted professional. And if the psychological report confirms that I am mentally capable, combined with all the technical documentation we have about the land, it will be very difficult for them to get the interdiction. The problem is they can appeal and drag the process out for months." Martha understood she was facing a long and costly legal battle, but she also knew she had no choice. It was her only chance to maintain control over her discovery and her life. The psychological evaluation was scheduled for the following week in Little Rock. Catherine Hayes was a psychologist specialized in forensic evaluations, with 20 years of experience in cases involving mental capacity. For 3 hours, Martha answered questions about her personal history, her recent decisions, and her future plans. The psychologist also asked her to explain in detail how she had discovered the minerals on the land and what measures she had taken to verify and document her discoveries. "Mrs. Martha, based on our conversation, I can say in advance that I see no indication of mental incapacity. Your answers are coherent, your decisions are well-founded, and your analytical ability is completely intact." "And will that be in the report?" "Yes. I will recommend there is no justification for interdiction, especially considering the technical documentation you presented about the land." The first victory brought relief, but Martha knew the family would not give up easily. They had too much money at stake to accept defeat without a fight. Back at the land, she found Sarah agitated with worrying news. "Aunt, Dad found out I'm helping you. He called me furious, saying I was being manipulated and that he would cut my name from the family inheritance." "Sarah, you don't have to sacrifice yourself for me." "It's not a sacrifice, Aunt. It's doing the right thing. Besides, after seeing how Dad is acting, I'm not sure I want to be part of an inheritance built on lies and manipulation." Her niece's determination moved Martha. It was comforting to know that not all family members were driven solely by greed. That night, they were startled by strange noises coming from outside the house. They weren't the familiar sounds of the badger digging, but human footsteps and the noise of tools. Martha turned off the lights and approached the window. Outside, she could see flashlights moving across the land, concentrated in the area where the badger had made the most recent discoveries. "It's them again," she whispered to Sarah. "I'll call the police," said her niece, grabbing the phone. "Wait, let's first see what they're doing and document everything." They took Sarah's cell phone and began recording through the window. There were at least 3 people working methodically, collecting samples from the deepest tunnels. They were clearly professionals, using proper equipment and working in an organized manner. After an hour, the intruders left, taking bags with collected material. Martha and Sarah waited another hour before going out to check the damage. All the main tunnels had been cleared of any visible material. It was as if the intruders knew exactly where to look and what to take. "Aunt, they know this land better than we do," observed Sarah. "Yes, because they've been here much longer, probably since before Arthur passed away." The next day, Martha took the recordings to attorney Diane Sterling. "This is evidence of an organized conspiracy to steal your property," said the lawyer. "We'll use this in the hearing to show there are very concrete interests behind the interdiction attempt and about the police. We'll file a police report, but it's unlikely they'll be able to identify the intruders. The important thing is to have everything documented for the legal proceedings." The interdiction hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. Martha spent the weekend organizing all the documents and mentally preparing for the confrontation with the family. On the morning of the hearing, she arrived at the courthouse accompanied by attorney Diane and Sarah. On the other side were Harold, the other brothers-in-law, and their lawyer, Mr. Mauricio Silva. The judge, Judge Fernando Almeida, was a 50-year-old man known for his seriousness and impartiality. He began the hearing by asking each side to present their arguments. Mr. Mauricio Silva spoke first, claiming that Martha was suffering from delusions of persecution and fantasies about imaginary wealth. According to him, a 72-year-old woman, living alone in precarious conditions and believing she had found gold on arid land, clearly was not fit to manage her own affairs. Attorney Diane responded by presenting the psychological evaluation, which attested to her full mental capacity, and the technical reports confirming the actual presence of precious minerals on the land. Your Honor, far from being delusions, Mrs. Martha's discoveries are based on solid scientific evidence, confirmed by a certified laboratory. The judge carefully examined all the documents, asking specific questions about the analysis methods and the qualifications of the professionals involved. Mr. Mauricio, were your clients aware of the presence of these minerals on the land? The family's lawyer hesitated before answering. No, Your Honor. These are recent analyses, possibly mistaken. Possibly mistaken. Based on what? Based on the fact that low-value land could not contain precious minerals in commercial quantities. Attorney Diane asked permission to present the recordings of the nighttime intruders. Your Honor, if they truly believed the land had no value, why are people trespassing on the property in the early morning to collect samples? The recordings had a visible impact on the judge, who asked several questions about when and how they were made. Sarah was called to testify and confirmed that her father and uncles had always known about the land's mineral potential since the time Uncle Arthur was alive. I overheard conversations between them about buried riches and about how to split the profits when they got the land. The revelation caused visible discomfort on the family's side. Mr. Mauricio tried to discredit the testimony, claiming Sarah was being manipulated by her aunt, but the judge did not accept the argument. At the end of the hearing, Judge Fernando Almeida was clear in his decision. Based on the evidence presented, I find no justification for the interdiction of Mrs. Martha Miller. The technical and psychological reports demonstrate she is acting rationally and with sound basis. Furthermore, there are concerning indications that this proceeding may be motivated by the real value of the property in question. The victory was complete, but Martha knew the problems had not ended. The family now officially knew about the land's value and would likely try other forms of pressure. Harold left the courthouse without speaking to her, but his look carried a mixture of anger and frustration that boded nothing good. In the following weeks, Martha accelerated the process of regularizing the mineral exploration. With Dr. Stephen's help, she hired a specialized company to conduct a complete topographic survey of the land. The results exceeded all expectations. The mineral deposit extended across almost the entire property, with especially high concentrations in the area the Badger had recently begun to explore. The revised estimate of the total value of the reserves reached over $1 million, considering only surface exploration. If there were deeper deposits, the value could be even greater. "Mrs. Martha, you are looking at an exceptional discovery," said Dr. Stephen, "but you need to make some important decisions about how to proceed." "What kind of decisions?" "First, whether you want to explore directly or form partnerships with specialized companies. Second, how you will protect the property during the licensing process. And third, how to handle the pressure from family and other interested parties." Martha decided she neither had the experience nor the resources to manage a mining operation alone. She chose to look for a serious partner company that could conduct the exploration legally and sustainably, guaranteeing her a fair share of the profits. Dr. Stephen recommended Terra Mining, a family-owned company specializing in small and medium-sized mining operations. The partner director, Gregory Thorne, had 30 years of experience and a good reputation in the market. The meeting with Gregory was enlightening. He confirmed the exceptional potential of the deposit and proposed a partnership where Martha would retain ownership of the land and receive 25% of the net profits from the exploration. "Ma'am, considering we provide all the initial investment, equipment, and expertise, I believe it's a fair split," explained Gregory. "And how long would it take to start generating profits?" "With all the licenses in order, about 6 months to set up the operation and begin extraction. The first profits would come in 8 to 10 months. The proposal seemed reasonable, but Martha decided to consult her attorney before signing any contract. Attorney Diane Sterling carefully analyzed all the terms of the partnership. "Ma'am, the contract is well drafted and protects your rights. 25% is a fair percentage, considering the company will assume all the risks and costs. I recommend you accept it, but with a few modifications to ensure total transparency in the results." With the contract signed, Martha could finally see a secure financial future. But she also knew the family wouldn't easily give up on such a significant sum. The answer came in the form of a new lawsuit. This time, Harold and the other brothers-in-law were questioning the legitimacy of Arthur's will, alleging he was not of sound mind when he left the land specifically to Martha. The strategy was clever. If they could get the inheritance annulled, the land would be divided among all the legal heirs, including them. Attorney Diane didn't seem worried about the new lawsuit. "Ma'am, they are desperate and trying anything. The will was drafted by an experienced lawyer and registered with a notary. It will be very difficult for them to get it annulled." "But could this delay the exploration?" "It could. Until the case is resolved, I recommend you don't start any major activity on the land." The news was frustrating, but Martha understood it was part of the game. The family was willing to use every legal resource available to get a share of the discovered wealth. Meanwhile, she continued living on the land, now with a security system installed and regular visits from Sarah. The Badger remained her faithful companion, continuing its nightly excavations as if nothing had changed. One night, the animal led her to a completely new area at the far end of the property. There, it began digging with redoubled energy, exposing rock formations unlike anything they had found before. Martha collected samples and took them to Dr. Stephen the next day. The analysis results left her speechless. Gemstones of exceptional quality, including small but very pure emeralds. "Ma'am, this here is worth more per kilogram than all the gold we found before," said the geologist. "If there's a concentration of these stones on the property, we are talking about astronomical values. The discovery of the emeralds completely changed the landscape. Gregory from Terra Mining immediately revised the partnership terms, offering much more favorable conditions to Martha. "Ma'am, with this quality of material, I can offer 40% of the net profits. It's a unique deposit in the region." But the new discovery also brought greater risks. Martha began to notice suspicious movement around the property, unfamiliar cars passing slowly on the road, people asking questions in town about her and her land. Attorney Diane recommended maximum secrecy about the emeralds until all legal processes were resolved. "Ma'am, the higher the value at stake, the greater the pressure we'll face. It's best to keep this information restricted to as few people as possible." Martha agreed, but knew it would be difficult to hide a discovery of such importance for long. Experts, lawyers, licensing technicians, many people would have access to information about the property's true potential. The lawsuit over the will's legitimacy took 3 months to be judged. During this period, Martha lived in a kind of limbo, knowing she possessed a fortune but unable to touch it. The judge's decision was categorical. The will was valid, and there was no evidence of any mental incapacity of Arthur at the time it was drafted. The family's lawsuit was entirely rejected. With all legal obstacles removed, Martha could finally authorize the start of mining operations. Gregory and his team installed discrete equipment and began the controlled extraction of minerals. The first results surpassed even the most optimistic estimates. In just 2 weeks of operation, precious stones valued at over $50,000 were extracted. Martha received her first payment, $20,000, more money than she had ever seen together in her entire life. But more important than the financial value was the feeling of regained independence and dignity. Sarah was moved to see the change in her aunt. "Aunt, you look radiant. You seem 10 years younger." "It's because I finally feel like the owner of my own life, dear. I don't need to depend on anyone's goodwill anymore." The prosperity also brought the opportunity to repay kindnesses. Martha hired Clara, the neighbor who had kept Arthur's papers, to help with household chores. She also funded improvements at the small school in the nearest rural community. "Aunt, you're becoming the most popular person in the region," Sarah joked during one of her visits. "It feels good to be able to help the people who helped me when I needed it." The following months saw steady growth of the mining operation. Gregory installed more sophisticated equipment and hired more local workers, generating jobs and income for the entire small community. The family, defeated in court, tried one last strategy: forced reconciliation. Harold showed up at the property accompanied by the whole family, including children, in an elaborate staging of a family reunion. "Martha, we came here to apologize and to celebrate your success," he said, forcing a fake smile. "What success?" "Well, everyone already knows you discovered valuable minerals here. We're proud that you managed to prove our family has luck." The hypocrisy was so evident that Martha felt like laughing. "Our family? When you left me alone after Arthur passed, were we also family then?" "Martha, that's in the past. What matters is that now we can work together, as a real family." "Work together as?" Harold took a deep breath, preparing to make the proposal he had rehearsed. "Well, you're going to need help managing all of this. We can form a family company, with you as the majority partner, of course." "And what percentage would you take?" "Something fair. Perhaps 60-40, considering there are several of us and you're just one person." The proposal was so brazen that even Sarah was outraged. "Dad, that's ridiculous. Aunt Martha discovered everything on her own, faced you in court, and now you want to take 60%. Sarah, you don't understand. Martha needs our help. A woman alone can't manage an operation like this." Martha stood up slowly, with all the dignity she had reclaimed in recent months. "Harold, for 43 years of marriage, you all treated me like a stranger. When Arthur passed, you abandoned me completely. When I discovered I had something of value, you tried to steal it from me, have me declared incompetent, and question my sanity. Now you want to be family and take the majority of what I achieved through my own effort." "Martha, the answer is no. You had your chances to treat me with dignity and chose contempt. Now you'll have to live with the consequences of that choice. You'll regret this decision, said Harold, losing his composure. A woman of your age alone will end up being swindled by opportunists. Perhaps, but I'd rather take that risk than be swindled by my own family. The family left, visibly frustrated, but Martha felt at peace with her decision. She had learned to value her independence and was not willing to compromise it for money or family pressure. Gregory from Terra Mining proved to be a reliable partner. The operation grew sustainably, always respecting environmental regulations and maintaining total transparency in the results. By the end of the first year of operation, Martha had received over $200,000 in profit sharing. More importantly, she had built relationships based on mutual respect and trust. The badger, who had made the entire discovery possible, continued living on the land, now in an area specifically reserved for him. Martha had a small sign installed: Environmental Protection Area, Mining Badger Habitat. He deserves all the credit, she explained to curious visitors. Without him, I would never have discovered the wealth that was beneath my feet. 2 years after the badger's first excavation, Martha had become one of the most prosperous women in the region. But more important than the material wealth was the personal transformation she had experienced. From a widow abandoned by her family and living on a small pension, she had become a respected entrepreneur, capable of making important decisions and managing significant resources. Sarah, who had completely distanced herself from her father after the reconciliation episode, became Martha's main heir and confidant. Aunt, you changed my life too. Seeing your courage to face the whole family, I learned that sometimes you have to fight for what's right, even when it's difficult. And I learned that it's never too late to start over, dear. At 72, I discovered I still had a lot to live for and achieve. The small rural community was also transformed by the mining operation. New jobs, better roads, a renovated school, an expanded health clinic, all partially funded by the resources coming from Martha's land. You're leaving a legacy for the entire region, said the mayor of the nearest town during a public tribute. I'm just repaying the blessings I received. The land gave me far more than I ever imagined possible. Martha's success inspired other women in the region, especially the older ones who had grown accustomed to passively accepting the decisions of younger family members. Clara, the neighbor who had kept Arthur's papers, summed up the general feeling well. Martha proved that we older women still have so much to give. We are not a burden to anyone. We are people capable of great achievements. The mining operation remained productive for several years, always in a sustainable and environmentally respectful manner. Martha made sure a percentage of the profits was allocated to environmental conservation and social development projects. Harold and the other brothers-in-law eventually tried to approach her again, this time with more modest proposals of participation in the profits. Martha received them politely, but maintained her firm stance. They had lost the chance to be treated as family when they chose greed over respect. You can visit whenever you want. You can have lunch here. You can join the family gatherings, she said during one of these attempts. But a business partnership, that is not going to happen. The decision to keep clear boundaries brought peace to all relationships. The family learned to accept the new reality, and Martha was able to enjoy her prosperity without guilt or external pressures. The badger, now famous in the region as the mining badger, continued its daily excavations, occasionally discovering new mineral concentrations that kept the operation consistently productive. Martha established a simple and satisfying routine. She woke up early, had coffee while watching the badger work, received the daily reports from the mining operation, tended to her correspondence and social projects, and spent afternoons receiving visitors or reading on the porch. In the evening, she would often walk around the property, reflecting on the extraordinary journey she had lived. From a piece of worthless land to a discovery that transformed her life and that of an entire community. Arthur, she would say, looking at the stars, you knew this was going to happen, didn't you? That's why you left this specific piece of land to me. Thank you for trusting in my ability to discover and protect this treasure. Martha's story spread beyond the region, inspiring documentaries on entrepreneurship in later life and on the importance of not underestimating the potential of older people. But for her, the greatest success was not the financial resources or the public recognition. It was the certainty of having regained her dignity and independence, proving to herself and everyone around her that age is not a limitation for great achievements. Sarah, who had moved closer to her aunt, gradually took on more responsibilities in managing the business and social projects. "Aunt, I want to continue your legacy when the time comes. Maintain all the projects, take care of the community, protect the environment." "I know you will, dear. And I know you'll do even better than I did, because you are young and have the energy to expand everything we started here." The years passed peacefully, with the mining operation maintaining stable productivity, and Martha enjoying a financial comfort she had never imagined possible. She invested part of the resources in her own education, taking courses in geology, business administration, and environmental sustainability. At 80 years old, she became a respected expert in small-scale mining. "I never thought I'd learn so many new things at this age," she remarked to Clara during one of the weekly lunches that had become a tradition. "It's just that our life only ends when we stop learning and growing. You proved there's no age to start over." The badger, now an elderly animal by the standards of its species, continued living on the property, but with less frequent excavations. Martha had a small special shelter built for him, ensuring he had comfort in his final years of life. "This little creature changed my life," she would explain to visitors. "It's only fair he has every possible comfort in his old age." The partnership with Gregory and Terra Mining evolved over the years, always based on transparency and mutual respect. The company became a reference in sustainable mining, using Martha's land as a model of best practices. "Ma'am, the operation we've developed here is being studied by universities as an example of how to reconcile mineral extraction with social and environmental responsibility," Gregory informed her during one of his regular visits. "That's good. I hope it inspires others to do things the right way, thinking not only of profit, but of everyone's well-being." At 83, Martha began writing her memoirs, encouraged by Sarah and the many admirers of her story. "Aunt, your story needs to be told to inspire others, especially women who think it's too late to dream big." The book, titled The Badger That Changed My Life, became a regional bestseller and inspired many people not to give up on their dreams, regardless of age. On one of the last pages, Martha wrote, "I learned that life can surprise us at any moment, at any age. The important thing is to have the courage to embrace opportunities when they appear and the determination to fight for what is rightfully ours. I also learned that greed divides families, but dignity earned through one's own strength is a treasure no one can steal." The land remained productive for many years, providing enough resources to sustain not only Martha, but also a foundation she created to support elderly women in vulnerable situations. The Arthur and Martha Miller Foundation became a reference in caring for widows abandoned by their families, offering not only financial support, but also legal guidance and encouragement for entrepreneurship in later life. "How many Marthas are out there, with talents and potential that no one sees?" she would ask during the talk she began giving on female empowerment in old age. Clara, her faithful companion, witnessed the entire transformation until the end of her own life. "Martha, I'm so proud to have been your friend and a witness to all you've achieved. You proved that an old woman is not disposable," she said in one of their last conversations. "And you proved that true friendship is worth more than any wealth, Clara. Without you safeguarding those papers of Arthur's, none of this would have been possible." Martha's story inspired changes even in local legislation, with the creation of specific laws to protect the elderly from attempts at abusive interdiction by family members interested in inheritances. The region's mayor commented in an interview, "Mrs. Martha's case opened the eyes of our entire community to the abuses many elderly people suffer. Now we have legal mechanisms to protect people in her situation." Sarah gradually took on more responsibilities, always under her aunt's careful guidance. The transition was smooth and natural, ensuring continuity for all the projects Martha had started. "Aunt, I have a proposal for you," Sarah said during a dinner. How about we create a technical course in sustainable mining here in the region? We can use our experience to teach others. Excellent idea, dear. Let's train a new generation of conscious miners. The technical course was created in partnership with the state university, offering free training to young people in the region. Martha's Land became a practical laboratory where students learned sustainable mineral extraction techniques. Gregory from Terra Mining became a volunteer teacher for the course, sharing decades of experience with the new students. "I never imagined our little project would become a school," he said to Martha. "You have a gift for transforming everything you touch. It's not me, Gregory. It's life that keeps expanding when we do things with love and responsibility." The badger, symbol of all the transformation, lived to an exceptional age for its species. When it finally passed, Martha organized a small ceremony in its honor, planting a tree at the site of its first excavation. "Thank you, my friend," she said, placing flowers at the foot of the sapling. "You taught me that sometimes the most valuable treasures are right under our feet, waiting only for someone brave enough to dig." A bronze plaque was installed at the base of the tree, in memory of the mining badger, who taught a 72-year-old woman that it's never too late to discover buried treasures. The ceremony attracted people from all over the region, including some family members who had tried to cheat Martha years before. They approached timidly after the ceremony. "Martha, we want to apologize for what we did in the past," said Harold, visibly aged and more humble. "We recognize we were terribly wrong." "Harold, forgiveness was given a long time ago. Anger and resentment only harm the one who carries those feelings. Do you think we can still be a real family?" "Of course we can, but real family is built with respect, affection, and mutual support, not with interest in money or property." The reconciliation was gradual, but sincere. The in-laws learned to value Martha for who she was, not for what she possessed. Family gatherings started happening again, now based on genuine affection. At 85, Martha remained active and involved in all the projects. Her mind stayed sharp, and her energy inspired people decades younger. "Mrs. Martha, what's the secret to maintaining so much vitality?" asked a journalist during an interview. "Having a purpose greater than yourself. When you work for something that will benefit other people, age becomes just a number." The foundation she had created had already helped hundreds of elderly women regain their independence and dignity. Many of them became small entrepreneurs, inspired by Martha's example. "It's moving to see women in their 70s, 80s discovering they still have so much to offer the world," she commented to Sarah during a visit to the Foundation's projects. "You planted seeds that will keep germinating for generations, Aunt." The technical course in sustainable mining graduated its first class with exceptional results. Several students were hired by companies in the region, taking with them the principles of social and environmental responsibility learned on Martha's Land. "Seeing these young people applying what they learned here is my greatest achievement," she said at the graduation ceremony. "They will spread a better way of exploring natural resources throughout the world." One of the graduates, James Bennett, decided to follow in Martha's footsteps and create his own sustainable mining operation in another county. "Mrs. Martha, you inspired me to believe it's possible to make money by doing good. I will take your teachings wherever I go." "Please do, my boy. And remember, true success is measured not only by what we gain, but by the good we do for others." Gregory, from Terra Mining, announced his retirement, recommending that James Bennett take over the operation on Martha's Land. "Ma'am, it's time to pass the baton to the new generation. James learned everything with us and will maintain the same standards of quality and responsibility." "I have full confidence in him," replied Martha. "And you will continue as a consultant, won't you?" "Of course. This place is too special for me to abandon completely. The transition was smooth, with James bringing new ideas without abandoning the fundamental principles established by Martha and Gregory." At 87, Martha decided to reduce her public activities, but continued living on the property, surrounded by the affection of Sarah and the entire community she had helped transform. "Aunt, isn't it time for you to move to the city for more comfort?" suggested Sarah. "Never, my dear. This land is my home, my history, my legacy. It's here I want to stay until the end." The original house had been expanded and modernized over the years, becoming comfortable and accessible for an elderly person, but maintaining the simplicity that always characterized Martha. Clara had passed away a few years earlier, but her presence was still felt in every corner of the property. Martha visited her grave regularly, bringing flowers and sharing the news. "Clara, you wouldn't believe how things have grown here. Your granddaughter graduated from our technical course and now works at a mining company in terra mining. You would be so proud." The tree planted in honor of the badger had grown and become leafy, offering shade for a small bench where Martha liked to sit on hot afternoons. "Badger friend," she would say, talking to the tree, "your excavations continue to bear fruit. Yesterday, James found a new concentration of minerals, exactly where you used to dig. It seems you knew things we didn't even imagine." The mining operation remained productive, but Martha no longer worried about the financial aspects. She had completely delegated that responsibility to Sarah and James, focusing on enjoying each day as a gift. "I discovered that true wealth is not in what we have, but in what we are able to give," she said in one of her last public interviews. "The gold I found gave me financial independence, but the gold I distributed gave me spiritual independence." Sarah, now a mature and respected woman in the community, had married and had children. The new generation grew up hearing the stories of great-grandmother Martha and the mining badger. "Grandma Martha, is it true you were very poor and became rich because of a badger?" asked the eldest great-grandchild. "Yes, it's true, my love. But the most important thing isn't that I became rich. It's that I learned we should never give up on our dreams, no matter our age. And when I grow up, can I work in mining too?" "You can, as long as it's to do good and take care of nature at the same time." Conversations with the children renewed Martha's energy and reinforced her certainty that she had built a lasting legacy. "It's wonderful to see how the children embrace the idea of prosperity with responsibility," she commented to Sarah. "They will build a better world than ours." The property had become a discreet tourist spot, receiving visits from people interested in Martha's story and the sustainable mining methods developed there. James organized a small visitor center where he told the full story of the discovery and explained the techniques used for the responsible extraction of minerals. "It's important that people understand that economic development and environmental preservation can go hand in hand," he explained to visitors. Martha occasionally participated in these visits, especially when there were groups of elderly women interested in her story. "Girls," she would say, using the affectionate term she had adopted for all women, regardless of age. "Never accept anyone deciding your future based only on your age. You still have so much to discover and achieve." Many of these visits resulted in lasting friendships, with women from various parts of the country maintaining correspondence with Martha and seeking her advice to overcome similar difficulties. One correspondent, Mrs. Rosa from Pernambuco, wrote, "Dear Martha, your story gave me the courage not to sell the farm my husband left me, even with the whole family pressuring me. I discovered there's a mineral water spring on the property, and I'm now studying how to explore it sustainably. Thank you for showing me that an old woman can also be an entrepreneur." Letters like this arrived regularly, bringing joy and confirming that Martha's story continued to inspire people far and wide. Sarah, "I think our greatest wealth isn't the minerals we found, but the lives we've managed to touch and transform," reflected Martha during one of these letter reading sessions. "Absolutely, Aunt. You've become a symbol of hope for many people." At 89, Martha began to feel the weight of age more acutely, but her mind remained clear and her determination unshakable. "Daughter, I want you to promise me one thing," she said to Sarah during a walk on the property. "Anything, Aunt." "Promise that you'll keep all the projects running even after I'm gone. The foundation, the technical course, the sustainable mining, everything." "I promise, Aunt. And I promise I'll do even better, because I'll have a whole lifetime to dedicate to what you started." "I know you will. You've learned well that true success is that which transcends our own existence." Martha spent her final years surrounded by love, respect, and recognition. Local and national authorities honored her repeatedly, but she always maintained the simplicity and humility that characterized her. "I didn't do anything extraordinary," she would say when praised. "I just didn't give up when things got tough and tried to use the blessings I received to help other people." On the morning of her 90th birthday, Martha woke up early as always and walked to the spot where the badger had made its first excavation. The tree planted in her honor was in bloom, filling the air with a sweet, gentle fragrance. "Thank you," she said, touching the tree trunk. "Thank you for everything you taught me about perseverance, about hidden opportunities, and about never giving up digging until you find the treasure." The birthday party gathered hundreds of people from across the region: authorities, business people, students from the technical courses, beneficiaries of the foundation, neighbors, family members. Everyone wanted to celebrate the woman who had transformed not only her own life, but an entire community. James Bennett, now an experienced and respected miner, gave an emotional speech. Mrs. Martha didn't just teach us about sustainable mining. She taught us about dignity, perseverance, and generosity. The land she transformed is much more than a mine. It's a symbol that it's never too late to discover our true potential. Gregory, the former partner from Terra Mining, now retired but always present at the celebrations, added, "In 40 years of mining, I've met many successful business people, but I've never met anyone who combined financial success with positive social impact the way Mrs. Martha managed to do." Sarah Moved was the last to speak. "Aunt Martha taught me that true family isn't the one you're born into, but the one you choose to build based on love, respect, and mutual support. All of you here today are proof that she built an enormous family spread across the entire country." Martha, seated in her chair of honor, observed all those faces and felt her heart overflowing with gratitude. "My dears," she said, her voice still firm, "when I received this seemingly worthless piece of land, I thought it was the end of my story. In fact, it was only the beginning. I learned that life's true treasures are not buried in the ground, but in the relationships we build and the good we do for others." End of story. Now tell us what you thought of Martha's story and the mining badger. Do you believe she made the right decisions in facing her family and fighting for her rights? Leave your opinion about this journey of overcoming and discovery in the comments. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other exciting stories like this one.